Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today in this webinar. It's the webinar to launch a report that we published some weeks ago about good practices to integrate youth work in services that work with young people experiencing homelessness. And in the end, there's a collection of 11 good practices from all over Europe, also with a very big diversity in terms of the work that they do, like the profiles of young people that they support or that they are getting in touch with. So yeah, we're launching this report today with this webinar, and we have two great speakers that are joining us. We have Aisling from Galway in Ireland, and also Sarah from Antwerp in Belgium. So thank you both for presenting here and for your time to present during this webinar. I'm just going to have a very quick presentation from my side, just to give you a little bit of background about what this webinar is about, and also just to give you a little bit overview about the report, about the collection of good practices. And I'm sharing my screen now. You let me know if you can see the presentation well. You can see the presentation, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, again, welcome everyone. FEANSA, for those of you that maybe are not so familiar, it's the European Federation of National Organizations working with the homeless. And it's a federation that now represents over 140 NGOs that are working almost everywhere in Europe, supporting people experiencing homelessness. And in FEANSA, we work with different areas related to homelessness. So, for example, women's homelessness, migrants homelessness, health, etc. And one of the key areas that we also work on is precisely youth. So, how young people are affected by homelessness, what are their specific needs, etc. And when doing this work and when doing this collection of good practices, first of all, we need to think about what are the different needs and the different aspects that are particular for young people when they experience homelessness in comparison to adults, and that is why we need services that have this youth mindset or that have a perspective that is more centered around the needs of young people and what they need compared to other age groups that are in homelessness. And here you see 6 different elements that are quite distinctive or characteristic of the situation. First of all, that for young people, it's not only about transition to out of homelessness, but also a transition from childhood to adulthood. That is complex for any person, regardless of the housing situation. Then also it is important to consider the majority of young people have left homes and relationships that they were dependent on. And also the enormous amount of changes that young people undergo in this phases of teenage years or young adulthood. It can be social, cognitive, physical, etc. There's also very often a history of being failed by other social services. So this means that maybe some young people are reluctant to go to services for people in homelessness, or just don't have, at least at the very beginning, that trust to work with these services. And then also there's a more in a structural level, policies can systematically discriminate against young people in accessing benefits. And with this in mind, actually the transition that needs to be made is that a homeless service is it's not just service for every person in homelessness, and then like some of them happen to be young people, but maybe just change the perspective and do it like the other way around. So how we can be a youth service, meaning that we acknowledge the different needs of young people, that we kind of have the tools to empower them and to kind of make them success in the transition to adulthood, while at the same time acknowledging that they might experience homelessness or like housing difficulties. And in order to do this transition, like there are many ways and many tools that services can apply or can use. And one of them is precisely youth work, because youth work gives or puts young people like in the center of attention and kind of tries to see the young people in a holistic way, and the needs that the organization needs to consider in order to do a more effective work. And now maybe it's important to consider or to ask ourselves, okay, what is youth work? So there are many different definitions. And here you will see a definition that is provided by the Council of Europe that has done a lot of work to promote precisely youth work and the different competencies that are related to it. And here is the definition that they use. Of course, like in your context or in your country, it can be different. Like Europe is very diverse in terms of backgrounds and educational institutions and so on. So you may find some differences, but this would be like an umbrella definition. And so they define youth work as a support for the personal development, social integration, and active citizenship of young people. So it's again considering a young person not only as an individual, but also about as a part of society and actively contributing to society. And then, of course, it relates to many different activities. So it can be like social, cultural, educational, political. But one thing that they have in common is that all of them like aim to create opportunities for these young people so they can shape their own futures. So it's about like empowering them and providing them with tools. It can be like personal, relational, etc. That will help them to become more independent and to become more autonomous in their adulthood. And finally, it's also about a connection to society. So how youth work can be useful in influencing society, political and power relationships. And this is even more important in the case of homelessness, because there should be also a focus on, especially about young people that face disadvantages or like social exclusion, etc. Then this would be like an abstract definition. But when we are going more to the level of the ground, to the concrete level, and how we can apply youth work and see what are the functions of youth work. Here again, like the Council of Europe provides a very good like summary or an overview of what's happening on the ground in Europe. So they group like youth work functions in different groups, and I will show like two of these groups. One is precisely about the relationship and outcomes for young people. So again, what we were saying before, that accompanying young people in their personal, social, and emotional development. It's about what we were saying before, the many changes that a young person is going through in this critical moment of their lifetimes. And then also about how the young person like relates to the society that they live in, and how to how to make them a sense of the society that they live in and how to engage with it. And then also another group of functions which can be very relevant. One of them is precisely support the integration of youth perspective in other spaces. And this can be other spaces like, you know, in this case, in the case of homelessness, how organizations that are part of the homelessness sector can integrate a youth perspective, or how other organizations like public administration and so on can integrate this youth perspective. And in relation to this, like in FEANSA, we thought it would be interesting to provide a collection of good practices. So other organizations that are wondering how can we make this transition to be more like youth-centered and to empower the voices of young people in our service, how can we make them? So here we included like a collection of good practices just to give inspiration to all of you that are wondering or that are looking for different tools or different ways that you can use in your service to be more youth-oriented. And I'm very happy with this collection of good practices because it's very diverse. We have practices from Ireland, from Croatia, from Italy, from Barcelona, like many different contexts, many different types of services, and this can be like very useful also because you can get like inspiration from many different examples and see like what can work with you or not. And this is just like to present you some more resources, like in the case that you are interested to know more or that you would like to have more information about the topics that we are that we will be discussing in this webinar. So here on the right, you will find reports like more like theoretical that we published a couple of years ago about how youth work connects to homelessness. Then also like the report on your left or the study session that we made with the Council of Europe precisely about this topic, and then for your reference, the like very important studio on youth work was carried out by the Council of Europe. And with that in mind, I will stop my sharing now. Yeah, I think we are quite on time. So yeah, with that in mind, now we will hear from two good practices from this report, and both have quite different characteristics. We'll hear first from Aisling in Galway in Ireland. Aisling works for Simon Communities, that is like an organization supporting people in homelessness, and they developed services that are focused on youth. And then we will hear from Sarah, which has precisely the opposite view in a way. So it's a youth service that works with different kinds of people, and one of the targets or one of the profiles of young people that they support is precisely young people facing housing difficulties. So it would be like very interesting to see these two different perspectives. So without further ado, I give the floor to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Sergio. Hello, everybody. My name is Aisling, and as Sergio said, I am from Galway in Ireland, a little small town with a small population. The population of Ireland is about 5 million, and in terms of homelessness numbers, we're hitting about 18,000 on average, with about 5,000 children in homelessness. So I suppose I'm here today to talk about our youth-specific supported housing service and the development over the years in terms of what we do for young people who are either facing homelessness, who are at risk of imminent homelessness, or need to be supported in their own homes. And so give me a second and I'm going to share my screen. Sorry, no. You see that? Yeah. Can you see me as well? Okay.
Yes, we see you.
You can see me now?
Yeah, we hear you well, and now we see the slides in full screen. So that's
fantastic. Okay, so really, as I had said, we support young people in homelessness, but more specifically, the youth service supports young people between the ages of 18 and 25, so who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. I suppose back in 2017, 2016, maybe groups of concerned organisations working with young people directly became concerned about the levels of youth homelessness, young people presenting as homeless or at risk of homelessness. So the local authorities, the local youth groups, the homeless agencies got together, and it was decided then that we would develop a service that was going to be conducive, and I suppose you talked about it there, Sergio, conducive to the needs of young people. And then we developed what we would call, and I might talk about that a little bit later, is shy supported housing for youth. What we offer here in Galway and what we started off with was 4 apartments for young people, and 2 young people then would share an apartment. And the idea is that it's transitional supported housing, and that the young people have their own key to their own front door with support. So there's no staffing at night. There's no, the model is to promote independence as much as possible. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. I suppose in the development since that time, we started off with, 8 beds for young people. We now have expanded to the capacity for 27 young people across Galway city and county. And we also deliver Tús Lacaz, which is through the local authority and the Child and Family Agency here. And we have 7 young people who have transitioned into their own homes. So they're also supported in the community. As well as that, we run a prevention service, so specifically for young people who may be at risk of homelessness. What we try to do is support, sustain them either in prevent them from becoming homeless or sustain them in accommodation, maybe a little bit around family mediation or how you can support young people to oh, I gone off there. How we can support young people to engage with their families and maybe reconcile. And I suppose that the main aim of the youth service is to just strengthen each young person's independent living skills and their competency so that they can live independently. Just a little bit on our 2025 stats. I suppose in terms of the homeless prevention and tenancy sustainment, we supported 80 households, 32 males, 26 females, and there was over 1,000 interventions. And then in the youth supported housing, so we have Galway City and Galway County, it's broken up. So we supported 27, so 27 beds that we have. And then in the county youth service, we supported 13 young people. And just to go back here for a little bit, I suppose the central core aim of the service again is to promote independence and to promote self-efficacy, independent living, develop independent living skills. And I suppose the whole premise behind this project is that young people have the skills and tools, and because we know that the brain is developing still until a young person is 25. So it's to try and support and give the tools and skills to young people so that they can live independently and to stop a cycle of habitual homelessness. So when a young person comes in to the service, that they're learning how to cook, very practical based skills, and a staff member will support that. So we would have cookery classes, we would have one-to-one cooking, we would have community supports, we have a social integration service that we refer young people to, we have a psychology team, we have a multidisciplinary team, an addiction service, a community detox. So young people are given the opportunities to receive the supports from the outside as well as the living environment. And I suppose we know that once a young person or anyone has a roof over their head, the stability of just having a home, that magic things can happen from there. And just to talk a little bit about the development of the youth homelessness strategy. So while we had developed the youth supported housing and it had kind of developed out in 2023, the youth homelessness strategy was developed. And just a little bit of statistics around that, in 2022, I suppose there have been a huge increase in youth homelessness, and youth homelessness has grown by 57% in the last 5 years. So again, young people between the ages of 18 and 24 in this case. And they accounted for 17% of all adults in emergency accommodation. And what we know about emergency accommodation is, and from the young people that have consulted directly in this strategy, is that it was a very daunting and scary experience for young people. So an emphasis needed to be put on a bespoke solution for young people so that they weren't institutionalized. And we also know that care leavers are identified as one of the most vulnerable cohorts and groups of young people. And in our service at the moment, so we have 27 beds in the supported housing service. About 50% of those young people have come out of the care system. And I suppose the great thing about this youth homelessness strategy is it created an onus on a specified young person service to be developed to avoid young people having to go into the institutional model, the emergency accommodation, while that can provide security and safety. Something needed to be developed that was more conducive to the needs of young people, and that's, I suppose, the service that we run. And I suppose the opportunity to present on this in the Oireachtas a couple of years ago, and to speak about the importance of looking at alternative care services for young people. So here's some pictures of our service, and I suppose a couple of things around the supported housing service is, one, it's a non-identifiable, so it doesn't look like a service, it looks like a home. And the young people are very much, they partake in the maintenance of their property and making it a home and choosing what they like. I might get to show you some of that, but it's just to give you an idea of what the properties look like. So it's very much based on a safe home, a safe haven, a place and a space for a young person to go, close their door, eat and cook their meals, very normal living. And I suppose over the years, what we would have seen is the importance, and again, creating services that are conducive to the needs of young people. And what we would have seen is that while, yes, a social care lens is very important when adapting any model of care, what I would have seen is that the needs of young people are a little bit different, and that the services need to develop and be in tune with what's going on for young people today. And I suppose you spoke a little bit about it there at the start, Sergio. Like it's extremely important to identify those needs. And I suppose we created a model of care that's a blended approach. So it's youth work and social care centred. And things like building resilience. And I love that theory, resilience, one's ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. And what we know about the concept of plasticity is that a person's social ecology can be shaped or molded points. So again, to go back at that very point when a young person is facing homelessness, that just by providing a little bit of stability and security can create resilience for a young person. And Anne Maston speaks about this theory, ordinary magic. And what she says about ordinary magic, it is the ordinary, mundane, everyday things that can bring about resilience. So by providing that space and place for a young person, that they can have their own key and come home from work and, cook a meal, have a friend over, have a cup of tea, sit with their key worker to work on their support plan and their care plan, and look at goal orientated and goal centered, strengths based interventions, and how that young person might achieve that, and what they need to get to achieve that. We would use a homeless outcome star to use that as a practical model with young people, and we know that visuals are very, very good for that stuff. And I suppose again, to reflect on the principles underlying youth-centered work, it's strengths-based. So you're looking at the young person's strengths, you're promoting self-efficacy, independence, empowerment, participation, belonging. And some of those are centered around Benson's developmental assets. And that is positive youth development in itself. It's very much a holistic approach and a youth-centered approach. So the young person is at the center of their circle, of their care plan, of their support plan, and it's to support them to achieve their goals and how we can look at making that happen. So with that, there comes a lot of interagency collaboration. And there's, engaging with other services, mental health services. We really try and put an emphasis and focus on education and employment. So that would be a very integral part of the model and the service that we run, is that we're looking at how can we support you as a young person to integrate into society, and to build connections in the community, because we're very aware that, yes, we're a service for this point in time in somebody's life, but it's the connections that young people make in the community that are going to be long lasting. We would see a lot of intergenerational issues, intergenerational homelessness, what we know about family hubs, what we see young, children being born into family hubs and hotels. So we work with families. And it's sometimes it's the design of the plan, the care plan, and you're working with the young person with where they're at, really. And again, it is all about promoting social, emotional, physical well-being, and there is a continuum of support. So when the young person eventually does move out of the service, we generally say that it's about 18 months, and we work towards move on. So once the skills have been developed, what we see is some people, when they come in, they don't even know how to turn on a washing machine. So it's the very, very basic things. And then you build and work with that young person closely to achieve their goals. And there's a model called collaborative helping. It's in Su Ming Ku, if anyone's interested in having a look at that, but it's a very much a strengths-based, goal-orientated model that works quite well for young people. And just like independent living skills, the types of interventions, budgeting and money management is a huge thing, and it's savings, and it's setting up bank accounts, practical things. How do I pay my rent? The value of keeping a roof over my head and preventing a young person from maybe getting into a homelessness situation again. Employment and education and training, as I said. And looking at other supports, whether it be addiction, OT. And I suppose just to mention something that we're seeing quite a lot at the moment is young people who are coming into our service who have added additional needs that may have not been diagnosed as a child. And we're seeing that quite a lot, and it's trying to link them to and signpost them to the correct service for those issues. And what you can see is that it can prove difficult for a young person maybe to thrive if there's other underlying issues. So it's trying to support a young person as much as possible. And I suppose the outcomes really is reducing the number of young people presenting for emergency accommodation. And again, people moving on to long-term solutions. So there's a housing-led approach. And as I mentioned at the start, we have had a number of young people who have transitioned into their own door properties, be it private rented, and some of it through their own allocations or through the Tusla programme. We do have a resettlement and tenancy support. So when a young person moves from the service, they have given a key worker who will support them in terms of just maintaining the setup of the tenancy. If there's a risk of them losing the tenancy, we will step in again and try and do everything to avoid tenancy loss. And I suppose the point being is that while the environment could change, so they may have moved on, the support is replicated. So no matter where the young person actually is, the support still remains the same. Piece of research that we did a couple of years ago with our young people in consultation. We carried out a focus group and around a sense of belonging. And we thought that was very important to focus on, because when a young person, or when any person is facing homelessness, it's a displacement. People feel displaced. And something that our young people would often say is that they don't feel like they belong anywhere. And many of them have been through the care system, so may have moved time and time again to different foster homes. So their ability to develop life skills is jeopardized. So we undertook a piece of research to recognise that the focused intervention, young people get used to crisis homeless services, and it has real implications for their long-term prospects. And just a quick from that piece of research, And our participants said, one person said, I don't really feel homeless in the service. When I was on the street, I felt homeless. With Simon, I feel comfortable to sit down and be like, yeah, I feel distressed. I see another participant, Simon, treat you like an adult. That is one thing. And I suppose what was very, very interesting about that piece of research is that sense of belonging for young people is linked to trust and rapport building. So what we found is that the young people said that they didn't feel that they belonged until they were able to develop trusting relationships. And that's quite unique about our service, I suppose, is the caseloads are that little bit lower because we are aware that the needs are more complex and that young people do require that bit more work around trust and rapport building. So that would be a core concept of our model as well, is that we understand that piece. The journey, and I often refer to it as like following the yellow brick road, and that yes, things will be frightening. So you meet the scarecrow along the way, and you might even meet the lion, and you might gain a little bit of courage. And I suppose that if you do, if you do follow the path, it's a journey, it's new landscapes, and it's, I suppose, with the bottom line is that there is no place like home, and that by very simply giving a young person a roof over their head, such a basic need, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is security and safety. By just doing those two things, that you can promote so much more independence. You can really support a young person to avoid and divert away from homelessness. And I suppose I spoke a little bit about participation a couple of minutes ago, and I suppose it's really something that we would find really, really important in our service. And in terms of the model of care, that youth participation, and it's so important to have young people connected and respected in their own communities, and working with other organizations. So we would have, this is a piece of work in the young person's, one of the services or one of their homes. This is their garden. And we worked closely with a graffiti artist, and the young people did this piece of art on their own, in their own space and place, where they could hang out and make it youth friendly, and be creative. And again, what we wanted to do was work with young people to participate in an activity that would amplify their voice. And I think this is a really, really beautiful piece. And just to mention here, this piece here, the yin and yang, a young girl, one of our participants did this piece, and she passed away. So that's still on the wall today. And it really spoke to where the beautiful young person that she was. And how that piece of art she was able to amplify her voice by working through this piece. And some other things here, again, you can see their art, and again, it was about making space and place. We see young people, again, the creativity piece and the participation is important. So this is a very youth-friendly piece of artwork here. And this here is just a project that we did during COVID. Again, space and place is very important, and making a home a home. And during COVID, we worked with the young people to, I suppose, make their space youth friendly. And they had, they participated in the design of their own rooms. So not only did they do that, but they learned how to wallpaper as well, which was very important. And actually, just to share that, we did have a young person, and he came to me afterwards and said, I have been to many different foster homes in my life. And he said, it's the first time I've ever been able to do anything in my own room. I always wanted red brick wallpaper is what he had, and he was able to do it. Just something so simple can make such a difference in the life of a young person. So with that comes the end of my presentation. One second now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley, for this very interesting presentation. I think that you gave a very insightful overview of the different elements that you consider important, no? This belonging, participation, and it's also like a very nice project, this artistic project with the graffiti, like also allowing them to express their own feelings and desires, through arts and being visible in society, also in public spaces. So very interesting. Just something they forgot to say at the beginning. If you have some questions in the audience, we will gather them all at the end. So we'll have a space for Q&A. So right now, if you have some questions for Aisling, please write them down in a piece of paper, and then we will have the chance to ask them. And yeah, we can use either the Q&A section here in the bottom of your screen or the chat, and yeah, we'll have the plenty of time for that. And now I'm going to give the floor to Sarah, and I'm sharing here her slides.
Okay, I'm going to say hello to everybody just before the slides pop up. Okay, this is quite quick. While we're doing this, I didn't actually manage to share my slides myself, so you're going to be hearing me say next quite a few times. So I'm going to thank Sergio already now for helping me out on this one. I come from Betonnen Youth. That's a youth organisation. It's Antwerp-based. And we're already going to go to the next picture because I've got quite a few slides on this one. And this is a little bit of an idea of what we do. I'm going to go to the next one. These are images just a little bit to show our organisation. So there's a lot of images, so we can go to the next one where it describes about our organisation. We're an organisation since 2003 in co-creation with young people, which means we operated on a voluntary basis until about 2009 before we got subsidised. And because of this, there's been a lot of participation from the young people themselves to say, like, this is how I want my organisation to be. This is what we think is important. We need this from the location. And when we became professional, they also decided this is what we need from the workers. It's always been an organisation for youngsters who've grown up in poverty. So it started in a trying to think of the English word, a community centre in Antwerp. And it was the parents who was like, we don't have, our kids don't have any leisure time. Can you sort of like do something for them? So they tried to get them to like all regular youth work, and it didn't work. And they went to a child psychologist, and they said, if you really want to do something, you're going to have to do it from the community centre itself, from the safe big family that it is. And that actually describes how we are now, because we do work as one big family. We're going to go to the next slide, please. This is a little bit of an idea of the big family, and we're going to go to the next slide. The photos we're going to be going through pretty quickly. What we do, we're actually open 3 days a week, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And together with the youngsters, we cook a warm meal each time we're open. So we sit together, we decide what we're going to eat. We teach them how to cook, because a lot of them are in youth care or have parents who are too busy or don't have enough budget to actually sort of like get a lot of fresh vegetables. So we cook a warm meal each time we're open. We go on a weekend 4 to 6 times a year. Well, here it says 6 weekends. It depends a little bit on our finances as an organisation. To get them out of the situation that they're in, to get them out of the city, to get them into a new situation, to learn things, but also it's part of bonding, because when you're with these guys 24 hours a day for a weekend, all masks fall off. Our masks fall off, but the youngsters' masks fall off, and you get to bond in a way that you don't do if you're just like opening together for 6 to 7 hours each day. We've got a united football team. So that's really specifically for the homeless guys, or the ones in at a very big risk of becoming homeless. We train every Saturday, and we also do united football teams. And together, when we're there as a worker, we've got to listen very carefully to the troubles these guys are going through, to identify the structural problems. I'm going to go on to the next slide, please. If I'm talking too fast, I'm hoping that either Sergio or Aisling will sort of like give a wave, because they're the only ones I can see. This was our last location. This gives a bit of an idea what it is when we're having a meal together. We're all around the table together, all different ages. The age group at our organisation is 0 until 30, which means we also have families with children coming in. Yeah, you can go on to the next one. That was a really good timing. And what kinds of youngsters come to us? Youngsters growing up in difficult home situations because of poverty, because of single parent situations, because of violence in families, youngsters that are homeless, young people with traumas, with handicaps, loitering youth. City doesn't seem to like them. I love them. Socially excluded youth, poverty, LGBTQ, migration, institutional boarding school, and the phenomenon drill rappers. I thought it had disappeared, but it's coming back again. And we reach about 230 different youngsters each year. From the 230 different youngsters in, the funny thing is 2024, 2025 had the same figures on this. From the about 230 youngsters we reach, we had 92 that were actually homeless if you looked at the ethos category, and were between 12 and 30 years old. And if you look between the youngsters between 0 and 12, we had 10 homeless ones in 2024 and 8 in 2025. So pretty alarming figures if you're looking at the youth work, not a homeless organisation. Going to go on to the next slide, please. Oh, that's one of the camps. You can see sort of like everybody there. That's a bit of an idea, like when we go onto a camp or a weekend, what type of group that we've got with us. We get all of the ages together because we believe that we're going to be one big family. And through being one big family, we actually create a social support network. One of the networks that they don't have in their own life. By connecting them to each other, they've actually got people that they can call when they need advice, when they're in trouble, or what happens a lot when they lose their housing, they actually find a sofa to sort of like reside on during their homelessness. Now I can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The methods that we use, one of them, it's actually a Dutch method. They call it being present, which actually means when we're there, we really have to be there as a worker, and we're not thinking about, oh, this is the problem that this guy is going through. I want to connect them to this organization. I'm going to make that call in about 10 minutes because that doesn't work. Because if you're there, you've got to really be able to listen to their story and hear what they need and how they think that their course should be, or which track that they should be doing. And it's not up to us to sort of like define, okay, you're going to have to go to this worker, but do you need any help? I'm really listening to you. I can hear your story. I can hear your side of the story. If you've just had a fight with one of your workers, your support workers, tell me how it was for you, what you're going through. That's a very big part of our work. And it actually means that the guys that fall out in other organizations or get lost or fall off the radar, they're actually still in our organization. And we're actually one of the places, like if they've been troubles, they've lost their housing, or they've been thrown out of the, I'm thinking the name, the emergency house, the emergency residing place for youngsters, the shelter, and they're not allowed in there. They know they're still going to be coming to our place. We try to make them stronger by cooking together, by looking at their talents, by finding things that they like to do. The home base is, we really, really try to work like a big family. We've got all different age groups going from 0 to 30, but also we've got people older than 30 coming in with their kids. And we try to make it like a big family, like everybody can help everybody. Sometimes we've got a 6 or 7 year old, and they will teach our homeless guys how to play again and how to forget their problems so that they can recharge their batteries before they go back to the homeless shelter. So it's actually nice to see that this learning-based way in the home base can work in different ways. Peer support. Yeah, I hope I'm not going too fast for everybody. Peer support. Like I said, everybody can help everybody, and a lot of the help that the youngsters give each other works better than if we do it as a worker. If one of the youngsters says, I know a really, really good person, She helped me when I was homeless, and she's at that organisation. Is it okay that I contact her? These youngsters say yes. If I say, I know a really good person, she works at this organisation, do you want me to contact her? No, I don't want any help. I've been through enough help. So we really do try to get the youngsters who've actually been there and experienced it to support other youngsters, and that works. Aside from that, we do a lot of policy work. We do believe that these guys becoming homeless is a problem in society that we really do need to address, and that the politicians should be listening to, and they should be investing in prevention, detection of this before they become homeless. They should be investing in housing solutions and in housing prices. We're going to go to the next one. I hope I'm going about a good speed for everybody. Okay, that's one of the photos of our group again. I put a lot of photos in so you can sort of like see the atmosphere that we create with these guys, because we do try to have a lot of fun with them, because by having fun and uniting them, it does give them the feeling of I've got a place to go and I've got a place that I can feel at home. I'm going to go to the next slide if it's possible. And this gives a little bit of an idea of our policy work and what we do. The photos are actually from a World Homeless Day action in Antwerp, so that we to let society know, okay, there's a lot of homelessness. We went to different statues. We put little, I can't think of the name in English, but we made these little square thingamajigs with a lot of text on it about how many homeless people there are, and the frames. We put these frames there with all of the statues. We left them there for a day. We took photographs. We posted it on social media so that people actually are aware how many youngsters are becoming homeless. And Netzwerk tegen Armoede and Stan, those are two local organisations that help us get the voice of the youngsters up to the politicians and policymakers. Going to go to the next slide, please. We do a lot around poverty, but since 2017, we realized we do have to put the voice of these young people forward that are experiencing homelessness, because we saw a dramatic rise in homelessness in our organization. In 1 year, we went from 3 guys being homeless to 17. And then we decided we're going to start doing a project about this and measuring it. It went up to 34. Now we're up to 92. Going to go to the next slide. I'm trying to look at the time as well. This was actually the startup meeting, because we didn't even know if there were any organizations working on it. So we sort of like decided to make an invitation and see who's interested to think about this problem, or who has actually noticed young homeless people coming to their organizations. We had about 30 different organizations around the table, which was quite alarming because nobody was actually addressing the problem at that moment in Antwerp. We need to go to the next slide, please. But we also decided in 2019 not to keep it Antwerp-based and to keep it local. So we went over the whole of Flanders, talking to young people who had experienced homelessness. And we made a big report, and we delivered that also to the politicians up in Flanders. Because when we first went up there, this year, but this is a local problem. This is not only Antwerp. We see these youngsters looking for a place, going from one part of Belgium to the other part of Belgium because they found a sofa that they can sleep on, and then they end up in Antwerp, and we meet them, and then we lose them again. This isn't only Antwerp, so we decided to go over all Flanders, get these youngsters. We made reports together with another organisation. Going to go to a next slide. We also made a film. I did put the link to the trailer in the chat, but it's a Dutch film, and it will be launched on Vimeo before the summer, and there are English subtitles. And we made the film because every time we went with the youngsters, they're like, yeah, but I'm always having to tell my story, and it hurts so much. Every time I have to sort of like say what trouble I went through, I'm ashamed. I don't want people to know that I'm homeless. And we sort of like said, yeah, what can we do about it? And these youngsters said, well, we can make a film about it, and we'll tell our stories, and we'll think about like the actors, the roles that have to be played, and we'll put our stories into the film. So this is actually a film made from our homeless youngsters to sort of like say, this is what we're going through. And this is one of the actions we did because of World Homeless Day. We also try to do a lot of actions, sort of like get the message out there, like these youngsters are having a hard time, and homelessness is not their fault. We're going to go on to the next slide. This is also part of the action. I think that's one of the things that we were sort of like doing with this action was sort of like also telling people that it's not only the youngsters coming out of youth care that are becoming homeless, because by this time there was a lot of attention for the youth care leavers, but we've also got a lot of guys who come out of home situations that they're sort of like able to survive through the situation. They wait until they're 18, and when they're 18, they actually get thrown out of the homes. And we wanted to sort of like say there's another group, there's these survivors. You've got these guys from a migration background, but you've also got guys who survive until they're 18. They lose their housing because they get into an argument with their family. They're on the streets. And nobody really picks them up because they're not registered. And if you've been in youth care, then you've already actually got this little key to get all of the help. They usually don't want it, but you've got the key to get all of the help because you've been registered. These guys aren't registered and they're very invisible. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And because we noticed in Flanders that everything is very local and everybody works in regions, there was nothing at the level of Flanders to sort of like connect organizations and to work on policy, but also to talk about what we're seeing. So together with Caritas Vlaanderen, we made like this network platform about homelessness with children and young people. We do this together with Caritas Flanders, and now there are 2 other organizations that are also helping us make this platform bigger. And we connect to the organizations, the academics and experts to exchange experiences, knowledges, good practices. And for the local elections in Flanders, we actually wrote a report saying, well, for your new action plan to fight homelessness, you need to look at these points. They've looked at some of them, they didn't include enough of them, but they did see some of them. So it does also work because we're like all connected at a level of Flanders now. And now I can go to the next one. Okay, this is me at the end. All of the contact information is here if you're interested. I think the PowerPoints will be sent on through, I'm not quite sure, or you can find it here, you can take a photograph of it. That's my email address. If there's any questions or anything, always welcome to shoot. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Interesting presentation, and I really liked the fact that you defined the organization as one big family. It's yeah, I think it's a very good summary. I'm just wondering, do you want to play the video now because we have some time, or do you think it's not necessary? As you prefer.
I think it depends on how many questions that there are from the people here. And if there's time over at the end, we can always put the trailer on, but it's the Dutch one, so I'm not quite sure how relevant it's going to be.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. So let's do that. Now let's hear from you in the audience. If you have some questions for any of the speakers, please write them in the chat or the Q&A section that you have at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And maybe you can also raise your hands so I can give you the floor, and maybe you can like address yourselves directly, like while talking. if there is something that really surprised you, or that you thought it would be like a good idea to translate or implement to your own context or your own organization, also feel free to share, or to maybe ask for some advice or some tips.
If nobody's talking, I'm just going to say how much of a fan I was of your graffiti wall. It looked amazing.
Yeah, we have another wall done in our other service as well, and it's pretty cool. So it's very important to bring out the creativity in young people.
Okay, I think we have one question. I would like to ask Sarah about the work on policy they are conducting. Can you develop a bit more on that? What is the reply from authorities you engage with?
Ooh, so that's actually quite a big question, because we are living in Belgium. Belgium is complicated. We've got the local authorities, we've got those of Flanders, and we've got those of the federal government. We've got, I think, 6 governments in total, but we've got 3 that we've got to talk to. So when it comes to the local level, we try to advocate that there are enough institutions for these guys. There's a walk-in institution now that's been funded by the local government, and that means that these young people don't have to go to the regular walk-in institutions for the homeless, but they've actually got their own area 3 days a week. That's part of the policy work that we do on a local level. Also, the need for the youth shelter, that they're not sleeping in the homeless shelter together with people who are 50 or 60 years old, because they become their example figures. So that's a little bit on the local work that we've done. On the work that we've been doing from the Flanders level, like I said in my presentation, we made a whole report together with the other members of DACUC. And this report, we provided it to the Minister of Youth and the Minister of Housing, which is the same person. And they have made, the Cabinet of Housing has made an action plan where they've actually specified that youth work is necessary to combat youth homelessness and to find these people, which means they did read the report. We've been mentioned in this action plan as one of the 2 organizations as an example. The only thing is we also put a lot more in that report that didn't get read, like the upstream project trying to detect and prevent youth homelessness in the screening in schools. And on the federal level, we're failing to make any make a lot of impact at the moment, because the federal level is now saying it's not our responsibility, and they're pushing the responsibilities off to the other policy levels, which makes it quite hard to work. But we do try to get the message out to everybody. And the reply, sometimes we really do see that things change, that they actually do initiate and listen to us, and at other moments we just get totally ignored. Or we've even had it that one politician said, if I need to listen to stories which I could cry with, then I'll open my mail, because I get them on a daily basis. It's like, this is not why we're here. So it all depends, but we just don't give up. Is that an answer to the question?
I see some clapping, so I I understand that, yeah, it is. Okay. Please, everyone, feel free to send other questions in the group chat, or raise your hand, and I can give you like I can open the microphone for you, so you can also ask them directly.
Yeah, and while we're here, I'd really love to advocate for these guys, because each one of them every single one that I meet, it breaks my heart to see what they have to go through. It breaks my heart to see the injustice that they go through. They're lovely people, and they have been hurt so many times. And I see that society has more compassion for a dog that has been beaten all its life and bites than that these guys get, because they've also been beaten in a way all their lives, and they don't get the compassion that they need, because every time they get a little bit angry or scared or stuff like that, they react in a way that for me is understandable. And for some people is understandable, but for a lot of people isn't understandable, because they shout, they're afraid, they're not aggressive. They might hit their fist against the wall and it's frustration, it's not aggression. They're afraid. And I really do think that we need to get that message out as well. Sorry.
Okay, so now there's a question from Lars. So this for Aisling. How do you handle practical housing issues once a young person is living independently? For example, maintenance or repairs are needed but not being addressed, or if there are disputes with the landlord. Do you have a property
Yes.
management? Yep.
Yep. So within their youth supported housing services, we have a property management team. So we would see a lot of maintenance issues, and I suppose to reflect a little bit of what Sarah was saying, yeah, often we could find holes in walls or door, that kind of stuff. There could be issues with things breaking, and that happens quite a lot. So we have a very fast responding property maintenance team, and I suppose we are aware that because they're young people, we are going to have property maintenance issues. So it's very straightforward to deal with once you have an internal team. And we try our very best to rectify any issues and resolve them as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes that isn't always possible. If you're talking about in terms of a private rented piece, that's a little bit more complicated. So you're liaising with landlords, or you're liaising with the young person to liaise with their landlord to try and get the issues resolved. Sometimes they don't get resolved. We see a lot of properties here in Ireland with mold and damp. We've had a lot of young people live in very precarious, trying to sustain young people in precarious accommodation because there is nowhere else to rent. And we have had young people who have been in absolute mold-ridden properties, and we have had no option but to sustain them in those environments because of the lack of housing availability, the lack of rental availability. So while in our own service, it's a lot easier to rectify those issues, in the private rented market, it's a little bit more difficult because you are liaising with other agencies, housing agencies around, letting agencies, and who then have to get onto a landlord to fix the problem who mightn't even live in Ireland. So you're dealing with very complicated issues, and we have had instances where we've had to support young people to purchase new clothing and get grants for new clothing because all of their clothes have been destroyed as a result of damp and mold and different issues in properties. So it can be very, very difficult when it's not within our service, but thankfully, yes, and we are aware that maintenance, those issues can be quite common in youth supported housing, but we are able to respond promptly enough. I hope that answers the question. I just see there at the end a formal complaint process. Absolutely, there is a complaint process, and I suppose each young person is issued with a license agreement. So it's not a tenancy agreement, but it replicates that of a tenancy agreement. So it's called a license agreement. And if there are, in terms of breaches of those license agreement, we would treat them like any landlord. But there is that little bit more leeway for young people, given that it might be their first time. We allow young people to make mistakes. We know that young people need to learn. And the complaint piece, yes, there absolutely is a complaints procedure. So we would always support young people to activate those if needed, especially in the private rented situations like I spoke about. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the answer, Ashley. Well, while maybe some other people are thinking about questions, I also wanted to ask you one. I think that you mentioned it before, Ashley, in your presentation about the intergenerational issues, but maybe also Sarah, you see it in your daily work, the thing of families that were like in supported accommodation for homelessness, and that you see that their children are going through like the same process, or like are also like at risk of homelessness. So how do you see this? Like, is it now like improving the situation like from the last years, or is it not? What kind of support do you provide to do this preventive work in your organizations?
Is that for both of us, Sergio, or is it just for Sarah?
Yeah, I think that if you want, go ahead first, Ashley, because you mentioned this, and then Sarah, if you want to jump in or add some more information.
Yeah, and as I said, it's something that we have seen young people, and we may have worked with their parents, and in some cases their grandparents, who may have been in homeless accommodation. And what we're seeing now is some of those young people are having children. And what we try and avoid is the cycle of habitual intergenerational homelessness. And there has been a number of cases whereby we've been able to support some of these young people. I have 2, 3 in my mind at the moment, whereby we have been able to support them in their own door tenancies. Now, these young people are care leavers, so they were able to access a different type of own door accommodation that maybe a young person that wasn't in care. So this is their allocation, their forever home. And we have a couple of these young people who have been able to have their own door property, and then it's linked family supports and linking them with the support that they need and require to, one, sustain their tenancy, so that the tenancy sustainment piece is provided by ourselves and Galway Simon, and then linking them to the family support network so that you can try and work collaboratively to avoid the cycle, and to break the cycle. So in there's a number of cases that comes to my mind where we've been able to do that. And again, there has been more of a focus on family mediation and family reconciliation, as I spoke about in my presentation. So I think that's really, really important focus, that we look at trying to reconcile or try and mediate or support young people to connect with their families as well. But there have been cases whereby we have been able to break the cycle of intergenerational homelessness by just simply providing a home to a young person. So I hope that answers your question.
We come in from a slightly different angle again because of being youth work. What we do see is a lot of the youngsters who come to us who become homeless, their parents also don't have the most stable housing situations because of poverty. They've moved a lot since they've been since their childhood, so they've been from one area to another because of the lack of stable housing. But we've got about 50-50 survivors going through all of this unstable situations when they're growing up, parents moving a lot, parents who, single parents who go into relationships, move in together, relationship breaks up, moving out, another relationship moving in together, like very short-term relationships. So these youngsters actually don't know what a long-term stable housing is. And when they go out onto the housing market, we also see, actually, for them, it's a problem, even if they do get stable housing, like council housing or something like that, it's actually very hard for them to stay there because they're used to moving so much that they also start moving around. The ones coming in from the youth care situations, we usually find that they, and they're having trouble keep sustaining their housing, it's because of the lack of structure that there is, that they're very much missing the structure from youth care. And those are usually the ones who, what by other people called the young delinquents, and they end up a lot having short jail sentences and coming out of that, and then through that system getting adequate help to sustain housing. But we do see it coming back quite a lot, yes.
Okay, thank you both for your answers. I see that there's not any other questions in the chat. I see also that there are no people raising their hands. So yeah, if you have a last minute thing that you want to say or that you want to ask, this is your chance. Okay, so I think that, yep, we can maybe like close the webinar here. I'm just going to ask you both if you want to give some final words. Sarah, you also mentioned this before that you wanted to say about the lives of young people, but if you want to add some other stuff before we finish the webinar.
Yeah, I just really believe that these guys deserve a fair chance, and they haven't been given a fair chance. And it's up to us to advocate that they do get a fair chance from the moment they come to our organisations, and to fight for that right. So I'd like to advocate for everybody to sort of like really start to be outraged from the injustice, advocate for their rights, and they also have a right to be happy in their life.
Thank you, Sarah. I think it's common sense, but sometimes it's just like so important to really highlight and say it out loud. Yeah, actually. So thank you for that. And Aisling, you want to say some final words?
Yeah, I firmly believe that we can either eradicate or decrease significantly youth homelessness, and by very, very simply providing housing for young people. And something that I would really like to see here in Ireland is that a certain percentage of our housing stock is allocated to young people who are at risk, because that is a preventative measure, and young people do not have to enter at that cycle of habitual homelessness ever again. They don't have to enter emergency accommodation. We do know that there are small pockets and small cohorts of young people who this supported housing model does not work for. Sharing does not work for. We do know that. We see that. The numbers are minimal, extremely, extremely low. And there are cases where some young people have had to revert to that model. However, what I have seen over the years is that those young people are housing first for youth. So that it's looking at other alternative youth specific based housing supports and wraparound supports for young people, so that you provide the home and you wrap the supports around. So I firmly believe that, and what I would like to see here in Ireland is that there is a percentage of those accommodations specifically for youth. And yes, that the other pieces, I really believe in this model. In the supported housing for youth, I think it can really prevent, and we have seen the numbers in the west of Ireland decrease significantly by just providing this. And I suppose it is to acknowledge the detrimental effects that can happen to a young person by entering the emergency accommodation system. The fear, the company, the institutionalization, I think is very, very important to acknowledge that, and to try and put something in place whereby we can try and avoid that at all costs. So for me, really that's my final remark. But I think that it is very important to do youth specified pieces of work with young people around ending the cycle of habitual homelessness. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. So with that, we finish the webinar here. Thanks a lot to both of you for presenting the great work that you're doing. And it's I think it was like very interesting to hear from you, like for the audience. And as I said at the beginning, the recording will be available. at the YouTube channel of FEANSA. So this will be for you to rewatch or to share with your networks. And thank you also for the people that joined us in the audience and for your questions. And yeah, have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.